some of those, like we need to continue because there's more goodies to see.
Yeah, this is back to the fantasy genre.
Yeah, you know, yeah.
I'm really seeing your style come through in these.
Oh, please don't tell me that.
The bottom right, but we'll get there. We'll get there.
I mean, yeah. I mean, I can see. I don't even haven't got words for this, guys. You know, I'm looking at this and I'm thinking, oh, girl, just lay off that pencil a bit. Like, don't press too hard. And I just, you know, I went in there and just. Yeah.
You were also a fan of the cross hatching.
Oh yeah. Well, I tried to do something, and I ended up it being more of a mess than anything else, really.
I don't think it's that bad. I think you have a pretty good approach in the sense in these sketches that you have like an area that you're making high detailed and then kind of leaving the rest a bit more sketchy and loose. And that always is, I think it always adds a lot of imagination to the sketch.
Yeah, I think I was not doing that on purpose though. I think I was just okay. I had enough. But the thing is, I you know that this is what I was just doing. In my free time and like end of middle grade school and just doing this and have you know discovering things and trying to figure out what's that. I mean, this is kind of manga-ish, you know. I'm trying to find something.
Yeah. Are these all from your imagination or are they?
Yeah.
Oh wow.
Yeah. This is not like there's definitely no reference here. Maybe some reference on those arms. I mean, those muscles kind of look like they had some reference, but it's pretty much, and it kind of shows. But it's
you were into the four-fingered hand. I see.
Yeah. For me, that was very much like elvish, demonish type of creatures back then.
Yeah, it's like a stylistic choice.
Yeah, it's definitely a choice. I don't know exactly why I made that choice. Maybe because I had a hard time drawing fingers and just decided one less to draw is easier. But I think it's funny to see how I'm already doing those creatures, like those weird creatures I'm seeing in my work now. So that's fun to see in these images that I really think need a lot of work. Yeah. But you know, there's something there. It's a lot of lines and there's a lot of things happening.
I think there's a lot of expressiveness and a lot of fantasy, like a lot of imagination that you're putting into it.
Yeah, and I feel page after page after page like this, and I actually really like this one here, that demon type dude here, because I feel there's something going on there. He's like holding a snake, and I mean the anatomy is not that bad.
I love how you have a thing like kind of ugly, scary trolls, and then like super sexy ladies.
Yeah, and the fun thing is I still sketch like this. I still fill my page with all these creatures, and so that's fun to see that I still have that way of sketching where I just start sketching and one sketch informs the other, and I just keep going instead of doing neat sketches next to each other and actually making sense. I just because in the end these sketchbooks are not for public viewing, they're for me and no one else. I mean but it's fun. I definitely can see Brian Froud coming back in this. Like I'm going back to my roots, and that's it. And I think that's definitely, we're going into the vault of shame. So we're gradually going into the vault of shame. So I'm just giving this to you. Back to you, Lois.
Yeah. So here are my my sort of high school era things. Let's see. So I'm going to start with a lot of the fan art that I did. So as a teenager, I was super motivated. Like I would fall in love with a musician or like a celebrity figure, and then I would like really be super motivated to draw them. And that like kind of drove my improvement for a long time as a teenager. So here on the left, we've got Hansen sketches. The one of Zach in the bottom right corner of that page was like my best drawing at the time. Like I was super proud of it.
I love that nose. That nose is so good.
Yeah.
That is really good. really good, actually.
I learned a lot about drawing faces from continually drawing Hansen, like time after time after time. I would also send, like, I had a lot of photocopied versions that I would then color in. So the darker ones are photocopied and then colored in with colored pencil. And then I would sometimes send them to magazines, like teen magazines, and hope that it would get published as fan art. I also had a summer, it was the World Cup in 1997. And that summer I was like really into the World Cup for some reason. I think, you know, I just watched it a lot with my dad, and the emotion, it was like a very intense World Cup because Ronaldo, like not the Ronaldo that's popular now, but the Ronaldo that's popular back then, was like just one of the best. And every time Brazil played, it was like, Ronaldo's playing, he's doing an incredible hat trick. I didn't know what any of that meant, but for some reason I fell in love with Ronaldo. So I had like a lot of drawings of Ronaldo, and I had a t-shirt with the Ronaldo and the 9, the Brazil 9. So I was really into him for a while. And then the top right ones are of the singer of Creed. So I was really into Creed as a 15-year-old. I listened to it.
Oh, you were 15? I mean, those are good.
Yeah, when I look at them now, I'm like, that's not bad. But I kind of discovered a trick at the time, which was to draw in black and white, and then it was just a lot easier to capture somebody's likeness if I could just like reduce it to strong values. Although I kind of like gave up on the face in the one up there.
No, I like that actually. That's a stylistic choice. I really like, because there's still some, you can still see the hint of the nose and the eyes and stuff, and there is something happening. There's a lot of movement in the background, and and
I was really proud of these at the time. Very proud.
You should still be proud. Because I mean, those eyes, no, they're certainly not bad.
But I saw a lot of beauty in this Scott Stapp guy, the singer of Creed, that like later just vanished when I realized that he was kind of a jerk. And so you can see really small underneath the close-up sketch some text, and I wrote loser, because I decided that he was no longer worthy.
And I was wondering, who's loser?
Him. So I kind of got over all of these people really fast, but they were like very intense, like, you know, one-sided romances that I had with these people.
They're absolute great ways of learning how to draw and how to, you know, how to see shape and what how shadow forms the shape of something, you know, how light and dark, the contrast between those.
I definitely learned a lot from like just drawing from reference and being super passionate about these people. You know, when I look back, I'm kind of like embarrassed, but I was so passionate about it that it like drove me creatively, and it taught me a lot about the relationship between passion and creativity. If you love what you draw, it drives you forward, and even if you later lose interest, it's still something that you learn a lot from, and that like kind of is foundational, you know, to the lessons that you learn. And so drawing these guys that I was in love with was always like a big thing for me in my early teenage years.
I definitely think the passion is so important when you do art.
Absolutely.
Like if you're just doing it, like going through the motions, it's like, what's the reason for doing it?
Yeah, you have to have like a kind of obsessiveness, sort of, at least. And for me, I don't have that anymore, but like I had that a lot in the early days, and it really pushed me to improve. So I continued this trend of like, so I went from falling in love with like random celebrity figures and musicians to falling in love with like franchises, like, or no, franchise is not the right word, like intellectual properties. So I was really into The Matrix, I was into Lord of the Rings. So you see a lot of Lord of the Rings actors here. Faramir, Boromir were my favorites for some reason, and the Hobbit. So I've got Dominic Monaghan over there. And then the top left is Keanu, because he's really into The Matrix. Like really, that's my first perspective.
I thought that was Nick Cave at first.
Yeah,
because of the hair, the longer hair has a type of Nick Cave
vibe there.
there.
The background, but it does actually, now that I see that. So I would take the photos and I would bring them into Photoshop, desaturate them, and amp the levels, and I would use that as my reference photo to get it as realistic as possible, because I didn't want to bother too much with with the color and everything. But then for the bottom right of Tobey Maguire from Spider-Man, I went all out with the color on that one, and I drew all of these on Okaki boards, which is like a really simple kind of software. Like paint almost. So I have like one brush that was a little bit softer, and that's how I drew all of these. So I was really driven as a teenager by these like I would say like almost obsessions with like movies or actors and that kind of stuff.
But I love the way that all of these feel different in media, even though it's all digital. But your use of cross hatching in that David Monaghan, I can't pronounce his
Dominic Monaghan.
Yeah, that one. Sorry. And then
set up.
I know, I love him, but I'm bad at names. I'm sorry. I'm a face kind of girl. And then Spider-Man, and you know, it's all very different. And I love saying that because you know, you explored your medium to the fullest.
Yeah, I'd say. I mean, I didn't really. like go three-dimensional at this time. I was really just trying to like copy what I saw, and I was like, I wanted to, it was like a shortcut for me. So I did struggle a bit with three-dimensionality in my character. So I was very good at doing these realistic portraits, but then when I drew like a character from imagination, I couldn't really get the depth because I was sort of looking at it the same way as I was looking at that paint interface copying, like pixel by pixel almost, like very mechanical, like a human printer. All right, so this is another thing in high school that I thought was hilarious. So that in high school for our like senior year, or well, like junior and senior year art studies. So I did IB art, which was like a 2-year program. And we had to start with a self-portrait, but it needed to be like an unconventional self-portrait. So I decided to make a little box that represented me. And I decorated it with all these colors that I liked. I kind of went all out with the pink and the blue and like,
so you.
Yeah, just really extreme, even though I myself never wore these colors, but I liked these colors, right? So I decorated the box with all this stuff and you could open it. And then on the inside were all of these like laminated sheets of printed out paper with like manga drawings that I found on the internet, and like all of these things from the Okaki board. So I don't know who the original artist is of some of these, the ones that you see at the top with the wink. It was just something I found on the internet and I printed it out, and then I put it inside this box because it represented my deepest soul, like me on the inside. Like
that's a big compliment for the artist who's seeing their work now, and it's like, oh.
I hope that artist, I hope I can find out who made it.
Please, if you're the artist, contact us, because we need to meet you.
Yes, if you were on the Okaki Circle, because that's where I got it all from. Okaki Circle was an Okaki board. All these French artists would draw on there, and I would like look at the pictures and print them all out and like stick them all over my room and put them inside this box because this box represented me and my soul.
I feel I've missed so much, like so much fun. I mean, I'm like, I didn't even know what the computer was back then.
Yeah, well, it was really fun. It was very rock and roll, but it was also like, I think that like I had a chaos of influences come at me. Yeah. And I feel like you had more the sort of like introspective space to really search for, like you may have had books or something that was screamy and chaotic.
I went to the library.
Yeah. I mean, I also looked at a lot of books, but I was getting most of my artistic influences from the internet, and it was all like scraps here and there. And that kind of like manifested as chaos in my style in the early stages.
I think it's interesting to see how that works. I mean, two different artists, two different ways of like how we grew up with our art, and then you went the internet way, computer digital, and I went the traditional. And I feel that I missed something because I wasn't online or digital at an early age. And but it's not a question of missing something; it's different, and it's wonderful to see how we both evolve.
Yeah. I think it shows how much context, like how you grew up and how you absorbed influences, impact like how you create and develop your style, and it becomes like the story of who you are. Yeah. So, and I love showing that because I think everybody has their own story of how they absorbed influences and how they like saw the things that they liked and generated meaning from it, and that tells your own unique story of how you developed your artistic vision.
Yeah.
All right. So the next step was Vault of Shame.
Oh, well, we've already visited that vault. We started.
So this was the start of the Vault.
It was the vault. Yeah. Well, after the first slide, that was pretty much already the Vault of Shame.
Oh, okay.
But
so the Vault of Shame is basically like artwork that we find intensely embarrassing, right?
To me, I find these part of my Vault of Shame because, and this is something I discovered going through all of this. I stopped drawing when I got to art uni. When I was about 17 or 18 years old, I was 18 when I started going to art school, and when I went there, I was told fantasy is not a thing. You can't do it. So I was just, it was that sucked, and I wanted to do it at home, and I still scribbled a little bit, and some of those sketches in the previous slide were from that era, but these are from like that red one. This is by the way, this is definitely Elfwood stuff. This one I did for a friend, an online art trade with a friend, David Cornish, and that is from 2003, and this is all pretty much around that era, and that's when I finished art school actually. Okay. And the sad part is because I stopped doing my own stuff during art school because it just wasn't accepted, and I feel my progression as an artist was halted, and I can definitely see that what I'm doing here is just all over the place, and there's no uh, it's like I forgot so many things I learned, you
Mm.
know.
Yeah, so you can sense when you look at them that you were feeling stuck at the time,
Yeah,
not
yeah,
really like in a good creative flow.
and it's kind of painful even seeing this, because I'm seeing somebody who really wanted to and was just, you know, held back in a way. And you could say that, yeah, I kept scribbling things, but I didn't put it out, you know, out there during uni, because it was frowned upon. Um, and when I was done with art uni, I started doing these kind of things again, and that was the moment I started posting on Elford, and you know, it's not good, definitely not good. I mean, my watercolors
I
are
don't think it's bad at all, honestly. Like if you
no,
were
but
showing this to me and you were saying, I was really feeling this, I was really into these topics and this stuff excited me, I would also believe it. But I think
oh,
it's because you look at it from that perspective of your personal experience.
yeah, I see somebody who's just missed a couple of years and you know, has to start over basically, and that's what I'm doing here. I'm starting over. This is a reboot. I
Yeah.
do like this one for some reason. I love my chubby little ladies.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's definitely, this is, do I feel ashamed seeing these? Not for these pieces, but for the fact that I stopped pursuing anything. I
Yeah.
stopped trying. And that's just a shame, because I let other people take away what I loved. So that's definitely one of those examples of yeah, that's sad. But
Yeah.
you know, I see some badass kick-ass women here. That's, and I really like that unicorn head. I really,
I think if you remade these, that it would be
oh yeah,
really
but
cool to see.
I mean, I'm doing like dryads. You can find those in my books, in my book anyway, and
Yeah.
you know, maybe not these creatures, but unicorns, everything's there.
Yeah.
And then okay, let's go to the next one. Is that the next one? No. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm being a
Oh, it's
clumsy.
okay. It's all
A
right.
klutz. This is some of my earlier,
Oh.
actually, some of my first illustrated projects. So things I've
I'm
done for
honestly kind of
clients.
like, I'm a little offended that you're putting this art in the vault of shame, because to me, this is incredible. Like, this is amazing what I'm looking at.
For me, this is what I'm seeing here is, it's not, let's call it a dungeon of despair.
Okay.
Like, I don't know what I'm doing. Like, I'm
Okay.
trying to find my roots or my footing, and doing things. And these are definitely, there's a progression here, because this is around 2006, 2007. I think this is 2007. This is one of my very first illustrated projects.
It's beautiful.
It's yeah, thank you. It's based on it's called Lauren, for a world called Talaria, I think. Yeah, Talaria. And I was asked to do this elven wood that was, you know, overgrown, and there was this one elf just walking. And I was very heavy into grayscale drawing back then.
So this is work that you did.
Yeah, this is some of my very
So
first.
what did you study exactly?
I studied graphic design.
Okay, and then you found work as an illustrator.
Yeah, so because at art uni they didn't do fantasy illustration or anything like that, and I just didn't want to do the traditional Dutch illustration, which is kind of, you know the Dutch illustration, it's kind of very much the same, and I don't particularly enjoy it, and I didn't want to do that, and I didn't want to become an artiste.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I didn't want to sell bullshit. Sorry.
Yeah.
So I studied graphic design, and then basically I set out to find jobs as an illustrator. And I began with things like this.
Yeah, well, that's impressive. It must have been, I can imagine that it was very labor intensive to make that. And illustration generally, like in the Netherlands, book illustration doesn't pay much.
No, I think maybe 50 euros per illustration, if that.
So you had a high commitment to this.
Yeah.
You were putting in a lot of hours.
And a lot of the stuff I did was for a free magazine. Like, and I just figured, okay, let's just do this because I need to, find my way. I need to build my name. And I didn't know where to begin, and let's just do that. Somebody gave me an opportunity and I took it. But yeah, there's definitely some design things that I don't particularly like. But looking back on how I created that mist, I'm quite happy with that. You know, that's all traditional. That's just an eraser doing its job.
So you've always been a traditional artist
Yeah,
in that sense,
yeah,
right?
definitely.
You
So,
never got into digital.
oh, girl, we haven't gotten to the digital part yet. I have some gems for you. And this one is one of my favorites, actually. She shouldn't actually be in the Vault of Shame of Pit of Despair, because here is something where I saw a shift. You know, I was, finding a voice kind of style. I this particular witch has this mistletoe tied to her head, and she's just chuckling because everybody who is under the mistletoe needs to kiss her, and she has all these tiny hairs here, and that reminded me of my grandmother, who always, when she at her last years, she had these hairs as well, and she would always kiss me. And then that reminded me of my grandmother. But this is one of those examples of, I'm doing the dark stuff, and then the really gruesome Cupid who's sewing the hearts, the broken hearts of the lovers who fell out of love with each other.
Oh wow.
It's all very deep. And then a book cover that's completely painted, and this is a spine, and then
very nice.
And that's one of the earlier watercolors, which was super difficult. It's not perfect, but I still like the marble of that pillar, to be honest.
I mean, it's impressive to make such a readable illustration with watercolor with traditional tools. I mean, for me, that would be a huge challenge, because I usually move stuff around and change the colors as I go, and that's not an option when you're working with watercolor. No. And also, if you're working with acrylic or whatever, you could paint over mistakes.
Watercolor
but with watercolor, it's like unforgiving in that sense, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. And I'm just having fun here. This is definitely some of that work. 2007, I see a shift in my work that I really enjoy, and I keep on going, and then we get to that wonderful dragon again, a cover for a book, and it's not good. It's like there's so much wrong in that anatomy, but I like the clouds.
I think it's good.
Traditional.
I think it's impressive.
It's
as someone who never draws dragons,
I didn't draw any dragons, but it's not even the dragon that I particularly enjoy. I love what's happening in the background with that mist, and the architecture is off, the perspective is off, but I love that suggestion of depth in there, which is one of the first things I tried, and I'm quite happy with that, actually. So these are all, this is client work where I had to illustrate a German novel and just illustrate the characters like this, and with notes and everything, and I really loved that. So I put that in this Vault of Despair thingy, because it shows how all over the place I was back then. And this is just a good illustration of me being all over the place.
I don't see it.
I don't like. Okay, you're doing Arthurian legend, Lady of the Lake. Then there's this. Oh, I got to show you this. This is one of the hilarious things. Okay,
love that one.
Let's zoom in on her. So,
she's very cool.
She's very cool. She's
is that a water bottle?
Yeah,
that she's got in the front.
Yeah. She's racing.
She's racing.
She's racing. She's in a race. She's winning. And I love that her breasts are just hanging there, just flopping away in the wind. Yeah. So that's another thing I love. I love humor in some of these pieces. And this is 2007 as well.
Oh, yeah.
So you see, I stopped painting after uni. In 2001, I graduated. And then 2002, 2003, I started painting again. And then this is 2006 and 2007. So there's a lot of change already in those couple of years of just going from that awkward period of that dryad, just not feeling it, and then doing this, which is already a huge difference.
Yep.
So for me, this is the Vault of Shame for me, but it's also the vault of learning, and I'm learning things, and I'm doing things. So very important for me.
Yeah, well, that is essential. I think that you have to kind of experiment, and when you're experimenting, you're going to have all of these like awkward phases, but it's the same as growing as a human, like as teenagers we grow awkwardly, but then we develop into adults, and it's the same with art style.
I'm still growing.
I think that my Vault of Shame stuff is more truly shameful.
I don't believe it.
All right, so here's my first sort of Vault of Shame section, which focuses on my attempts to draw in a manga style. So I discovered this kind of anime manga style, sort of shorthand for a variety of styles, of course. But I discovered like this Japanese approach in high school in ninth grade, because a good friend of mine was really into it. She like watched a lot of anime. She had a lot of the manga comics, and she introduced me to this style. And it just felt like something I should be doing. I don't know why. It just felt like the natural next step, because I was doing a lot of stuff that was like very realistic, you know, just copying stuff in front of me. And I wanted to make the jump into drawing stuff from the imagination. So here's my attempts to kind of draw in that style. And you can see that I'm trying to figure out how those eyes work, you know? So I've got like those eyes, and I'm trying to figure out like how many shiny chunks are on that eye. Like how big and shiny does it have to be to feel like.
Did you have any, like, I know there's all these how to draw manga books and stuff like that. Did you have any of those when you started doing this? Because I can see the construction lines of the face.
Yeah, I think I Googled a how to draw a manga head tutorial.
I
seriously just typed it in a search engine and got this whole system of drawing a circle and some constructional lines. But I don't think I was really doing it right, because when I look at where the constructional lines are, I'm wondering why I chose those. So I didn't really know. I was just trying stuff out. Drawing with a gel pen as well, which I find hilarious. I have like the sparkly gel pens. And I included a couple of like really awkward attempts to draw bodies, like the sort of creepy princess over here on the side, and this like sort of unfinished hunched figure. Because like I was focusing a lot on the faces, but I did not know how to draw the bodies. So whenever I did challenge myself, it just became kind of stretch out, and I got very lost. Like as soon as I started, the hands are always like these confused scribbles, basically.
Yeah, but there's a lot to learn. I mean, there's a lot of information. The head is one thing, but then at the body and all those appendages, and you're like lost.
Yeah, the big picture was just like very complex to me. So I know how to draw from reference, but like this was just so hard.
Yeah.
And then I have an old Akaki in there as well, like the pink one that was very like, just like the kind of anime style that I was trying to capture. I think kind of like Dragon Ball Z influence. With very large foreheads and the features all down towards the bottom. So this is sort of where I was at. I wasn't sure how to make it work, but I was going there, you know?
Yeah.
And when I look at the highlighting, I can feel the struggle, like how hard this was for me.
But I do the highlight on that nose and on that cheek and such. I do think you're getting there. I mean,
it is foundational. Like what I was doing here is absolutely foundational to the style that I later found. So I was definitely exploring those little things. Next. Oh yeah, so this is a step earlier again. So this is my vault of shame section, because I am super embarrassed of all of my attempts to be funny through my art. So when I was drawing as a 13-year-old, 12-year-old, 10-year-old, like in that phase before I became a super embarrassed teenager, I thought that like, I thought I could make people laugh with my art. So I made a lot of like super awkward cartoons.
I'm laughing, they're amazing. I'm like, what went through your head?
I just thought this stuff was hilarious. Like I think people who know me well, like maybe you know this about me, that I really like very bad like dad joke type of humor.
Yeah.
Like I love it. But I've always had this, you know, since I was a kid. So this is some of the art, like on the left side is from my early computer art, you know, Loish from Marla's computer art booklet.
Hey, that's the dog from the first year, from your first drawing.
Yeah. His ear is now in the right position.
And he's never felt so confused in his whole life.
So I don't know what I was thinking there, but I think I thought it was funny. I don't know. I probably drew a puppy, and then I was like, how can I make this even weirder? Or I was probably drawing a weird background and then added the puppy, and I was like, how can I make a connection between the two? I have no idea, but I thought this was
I love that you reused him in that top drawing as well.
Yeah, he's in there. That's true. So I made like a sort of mosaic of all these different textures and stock images and my own art. There's like a car, there's like weird tiles, like just stuff cut out from other drawings, and then I made a wall out of it, and then I had the pumpkin like lifting it and saying all those years of training have finally paid off. And I definitely love the exclamation back then, just as many as were needed to get the point across.
Oh man.
And then we had to do like, this is from my history notebook, we had to draw like sketches of historical stuff. So I drew a sketch of a night, and then I couldn't resist adding who turned the lights off. So that was hilarious. And then of course the kitten. I posted this one on Twitter the other day too. This enraged cat with a very
I love the unibrow.
Yeah, his unibrow, and also that one whisker that sort of snapped out of place because he's losing it. You know, that one whisker is the first of many things that snap. And he
took a bite off that out of that tub he's in.
Yeah, so that's the sort of headspace I was in with trying to be funny through my art. When I look at that, I feel very embarrassed. Like this is very, I don't know. I don't know like what kind of humor I was trying to touch on here. I was just trying to be funny. And here's another one. So in the early days, I mixed influences like crazy, especially, so these were also drawn when I was 15. And I think it's really funny when I look at my old art that a lot of the stuff that really is formative happened when I was around 15. So like some of my best work and some of my worst work was all created in that year because I was like super inspired and just kind of mixing it all in. It was like, you know, like a crock pot of just random influences. And I think this shows really well those influences. So I was really into the Powerpuff Girls. I was on a Powerpuff Girl themed Oikaki board, and I'm still friends with a lot of those people that I met there. It was just like a little Powerpuff Girl community, and we would draw like Powerpuff OCs and, you know, like all different twists and different styles of Powerpuff. And I got really into Star Wars at the time. So episode 2 had just come out, and that's the one where Padme and Anakin fall in love. And I watched it later, and I was kind of disturbed by the lack of like chemistry between the two. But as a teenager, I watched it, and I was like, this is so romantic. And the reason I thought it was romantic is because her dress was so pretty. So this is kind of how I thought at the time. I was also really into Art Nouveau, and I could see the Art Nouveau influence in her dress. I could see that it was like a Art Nouveau take on Star Wars. So I had to mix it all. I had to add a third influence. So Art Nouveau, Star Wars, and of course Powerpuff Girls. And then this kind of came out of that.
I think it's wonderful.
Yeah. Well, when I look at it, I'm kind of embarrassed because I know that like I was really trying to capture ethereal beauty with these. Like I was not doing this as a joke. I really thought that like this was a really good way to express the transcendent beauty of Padme.
You know, I'm seeing it. It's the pose. It's like
I still like the last one. The last one works quite well with the loose ribbon. So I was using a lot of like this tool they had on Oikaki where you could like bezier lines. So you didn't like draw the line, but you just kind of like constructed it from these angles because I was working with a mouse at the time. So this is all with my ball mouse. So kind of you have to clean out, you know.
With the fluff, like
yeah. So that's what I drew these with, and I thought it was really funny because I met Ian McCaig a couple times by now at events like Lightbox, and he was one of my biggest influences at this time because I saw some of his Padme concept art and it blew me away. Like I still think the Padme concept art is more beautiful than anything that showed up in the movie because it just has that beautiful, it's just gorgeously constructed. It's so poetic. And so I was at a dinner with Ian McCaig and a bunch of other people, and Ian was talking to some other people, and I was just like, I need to show him these. You know, he needs to know like the influence that he had. So I went up to him and I showed him. I was like, you've inspired me so much. I have to show you my Padme Powerpuff Girls. They're inspired by you. And I think he was very kind in his response.
Yeah, that's
but I think that he was like, oh, interesting. Like I think he didn't really know what to say. But this is truly like these had such a big impact on me. But I'm still very embarrassed of them because when I look at them now, I'm like, why Powerpuff? You know, I didn't really think those decisions through. I just did them because I wanted to. It was very impulsive.
I mean, you were 15 years old, and this was what you were fully immersed in. So that's totally normal.
Yeah, I didn't think twice about anything, and that is something that sometimes I genuinely really miss as an adult, as somebody who has to weigh a lot of my decisions, my creative decisions as well in terms of my career. At this time in my life, I really didn't think things through very much at all, and it was very freeing. It was very nice.
I mean, that's the beauty of these. They are truly just because you want them to be.
Yeah. And it made sense because I just had the idea. Yeah. And I didn't think any further than that.
But isn't that just wonderful that, you know, you could have that freedom, and as soon as you're starting out to pursue a career, you have to make decisions, and everything you do has to be you have to decide carefully, and it can be limiting.
Yep, for sure. And this is the kind of stuff where you learn the most, I think.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I'm a fan. I want a t-shirt with Powerpuff Padme.
I'll get you one. You better wear it. You better wear it.
We tried.
All right, so the next category that we had is side quests.
Yeah, well, you know, for me, it's still the Vault of Shame continues, but it's side quest-ish, and that's let's do digital.
Oh yeah.
These are some very never before seen digital pieces of me, and I discovered certain brushes. Like, hey, who's going to paint coral? There's a brush for that.
Yeah, that's the beauty of digital. I love that dragon, by the way.
This one, yeah.
Yeah, this chubby guy.
This is where I started just doing sketches and then coloring them digitally, which was really that's really close to what I'm doing now, but traditionally. Mm-hmm. And it's actually, this is one of those things I did for schoolism. Bobby used to do these daily drawings or some kind of challenges, and he said
I can see it. It's very Bobby Chew-ish.
And I started doing those, and I love doing that, and I still love this particular witch, the Davy Crockett witch. I love these things. I like that's humor, and I love how that little raccoon is just hanging on for dear life, and that witch is like really satisfied with themselves. And then this is
we might have to censor that one in the final.
Yeah. Can you put a bar on top?
We might have to.
So yeah, that's a published piece. It was published. That mermaid as well. I'm trying to not show that particular piece. Just but yeah, it's digital, and
I think it's pretty good. I think it looks like you use textures and textured brushes, which is already like a very natural mix with your style.
Yeah, I was just trying something, and I'm still very happy with how that dragon scaly thing looks, and how that I love the looseness of those brush strokes there. Definitely some of my favorite things happening here.
Yeah, it looks good.
Oh yeah, and it's again it's a sketch and then color digitally. But for me, it felt so very off. So this was one of my avenues that I tried, because I thought people wanted me to do digital because that was called for or asked for, and I was seeing a lot of people doing that, and I thought I had to do that. And that's one of the avenues I explored. And this is another avenue I explored, and I'm still doing some things like this. I illustrated a lot of children's books or picture books. These are
this is really different than everything else.
Oh, very different. Yeah. And I enjoy doing this, but is it me? Not 100%. Like it's an aspect of me, but it's definitely not what I want to do. And also, like, for instance, this book was about emotions, and I had to fight the publisher on everything. Like, my kids were from all racial backgrounds. There's an Islamic girl there. I'm having the worst. This is the worst. Snaggletooth there. And
is that Korean?
Chinese. I believe it's Chinese. So that was translated in China and in France, cool. I think. And I didn't see a penny of all of that. So that's another reason why I hate this. I think I didn't earn a lot of money on these. And then Princess Nina, a story about a lesbian princess who falls in love with an African princess. And if you look that one up on Amazon, you'll see me being named as a heretic and a Satan worshipper, and you name it, it's me.
But aren't you a Satan worshipper though? I thought you were.
I'm not. I don't even believe in Satan, really.
Okay.
That's a construct that I don't believe in. And then this is for a history book.
Very
history
cool.
Stories, and it's digital for an older public, for older kids. And then I'm guys, I'm just not, this is technology for you. That's why I'm traditional. Never does what I want to do.
I love how colorful this whole slide is. It's just so like,
I tried so many things. And that's what I love about being an artist, is just trying everything. And I know that a lot of people say, yeah, you have to stick with one thing. And I'm like, no, you have to try and be able to change your mind.
Yeah.
And that's what you've seen me do, is just change my mind continuously. So I wanted to try picture books and children's books, see if I liked it. And I don't hate it, but do I like it? It's okay. Doesn't pay very well. So I'm not spending 3 months for 1,500 euros. Hell no. That
definitely takes the fun out of it, huh?
I
guess that's also one of the main reasons why this would be a side quest for you, is because it just wasn't that it didn't yield that much results for your career. Like, it wasn't sustainable.
No, because in the Netherlands, when you get 1,500 euros for the entire book, that's about 3 months of work when you're traditional like me, and you're spending every single day of the week just working on that. And then 1,500 euros, that's it. And then you start getting money when the royalties come in, but the royalties don't come in unless the book is a bestseller. And that never or rarely happens in the Netherlands for a unique Dutch book. But I also started doing this. This was done in the similar time, which is completely different. It's very dark. This
is very like illustration genre. Like what we saw before was like storybook illustration. And this is Much more like the kind of stuff you'd see in like Spectrum or something.
Yeah. Well, I was just trying to find my voice, really trying to find who I was. And I love all these things. Like I love the crazy witches and the really funny stuff. Like you had the funny, the weird humor. I too have the weird boobs are flying witches. But I also love to paint pictures of, this is, for instance, a Black Widow.
That's beautiful.
And she is, let's see if I don't fuck this one up. So
she's a spider.
She's a spider, and that big dress is hiding those legs.
Oh my God. That just seriously gave me goosebumps.
Yeah, and then you have
I'm really scared of spiders. So
you have these eyes, and then all these pictures in the back of her late husbands. Like, I thought that was brilliant.
Did you paint that border as well?
Yeah, it's all hand painted. So
Gorgeous.
everything was just hand painted on top of the mat.
And you wouldn't be doing this stuff anymore nowadays? Or is this the sort of thing that you would still dip back into?
Yeah, definitely. They still dip, because this is also what I really enjoy. But I'm just, this definitely was around 2011, I think, 2012.
Yeah.
And I saw myself shifting into a more grown-up style, maybe more gallery kind of stuff.
And how did you generate income from this sort of stuff? Did you sell prints of it? Oh, you
didn't.
This is purely for passion. So you didn't sell prints, or you didn't sell the originals?
No. I sold sketchbooks, for instance.
Oh, okay.
I went to Elixcon and sold these originals. So that one sold, that one sold, that one sold, that one sold. This I can't sell because my husband loves it. It's the misfortune teller.
Oh gosh.
I mean, there's a story behind that, and
they're very, very like detailed, dense, and very storytelling kind of images. Yeah,
and they're kind of gruesome, but not. I don't think they're gruesome. I don't think they're scary. But other people look at these and like, oh, that's nasty, that's horror. And that's what I started discovering, that I love doing things that could be scary to some and beautiful to others.
Yeah.
And that's what I find interesting. And that's I started finding that balance here. And even this is one of the first sculpts I did.
It's beautiful.
And that's part of that piece. And I love that haunting look of that woman just peering at you. And for me, that's beauty. And other people are just haunted by those empty eyes. And this is my Marie Antoinette, and it's based on an official picture of Marie Antoinette, actually, with her dress like that. And in that era, they had these wigs with boats in it and stuff like that. So I thought it was funny to create her hair as the Kraken and just dragging that ship down, and then she's holding a bone because that's from all the people she killed and stuff. I thought it was funny.
I like it too.
I still think it's funny.
I always feel like these could be like I went to the Harry Potter experience in London, and you have like all those paintings, and they were like real paintings that they found in thrift shops and modified to make it look magical. And I feel like these are the kind of paintings you would see on the wall in a movie where it just gives like this essential backstory, but you only catch a glimpse of it. And then later you find out the true story behind it.
Yeah.
It has like a film like quality to it.
Yeah, and I think it's fun to show these because there's just a couple of years between these and those first ones after uni.
Yeah, it's
not a lot of time between those, but you can see that I just went for it and stuck with it, and just I want to make this, I want to do this is what I want to do. And I didn't know exactly what it was I wanted to do, if it was gallery shows or Spectrum worthy art or work for Magic or all that kind of stuff, do children's books. And because I didn't know, I just decided to do everything and figure out what I wanted to do, which is difficult, of course, because you're very fragmented, and it's very difficult to then find what you.
And it's a risk, because if you are doing something you like, and then just seeing where you go from there, then you don't really know how you're going to make a living off of it. Like, it's not really a strategy for income, even though it could yield something. You don't know for sure. But
I didn't need to yield an income. I had a steady job. I was working as a graphic designer. So for me, it was never about an income. It was just, I wanted to be an artist. I wanted to have my work on show at a gallery show or something like that. Or
so having the steady income gave you the freedom on the side to kind of explore different things.
Do all of this. So for me, I always say, like, there seems to be this stigma of you have to work as an artist immediately, and I'm like, it takes a bit more work and more time, but there's something to say about having that day job to support you and pay your bills, and just to take that time and that freedom to explore and do whatever the hell you want to do.
Yeah, I think a
That
lot of artists
pressure.
have that situation where they have to get their steady income from a different
Yeah.
job, and then they have to kind of do their own thing on the side. And I think for a lot of people, that's something that is like there's so much benefits that can be had from this situation. There's also a lot of downsides to it,
Yeah.
but having like a lot of people are forced into that position, and there's a lot you can get out of it. It doesn't mean that you can't like grow creatively.
Yeah, but
Uh,
this is just one of those examples of because when people look at me now and see what I'm doing now, and I think you have the same thing, is they see where you are now, your
yeah,
success, and they want that. How did you get there? And they want to try that. But what works for me doesn't have to work for you. You have to
yeah.
figure out what works for you.
And leave some space to do what you really love and see what
Yeah,
can grow out of that. Because if
yeah,
you try to reverse engineer it and like kind of adapt your creative work to what you think is the right career path, you might be throwing out some stuff that you're really passionate about, right? And you
yeah,
have to keep cultivating that.
yeah, definitely.
Okay, so I'm going to show my side quests. And my first side quest is furry art, or as we called them at the time, anthros. And for a long time, I drew these kind of like half animal, half people characters. I never went like full furry and gave them like a snout or anything. I kept like the human face for the most part, but I added like animal ears and animal tails and fur and like funky colors.
Love your
And
Care Bear.
yeah, I was looking at that Care Bear and I was like, how do the hands work? You know what I
Yeah,
mean? Because they're like
yeah.
huge mittens with no loose fingers. But I didn't really think that one through. I just thought like, I don't know, I don't really know like what I was really going for in terms of like sexiness, but I can see that I'm trying to get these characters to be sexy, but like I just didn't really know how like that would work exactly. Like were they mostly cute or were they attractive or whatever? I think I was just playing around. With the colors mostly. And I think it's funny when I look at these because I kind of ditched this stuff, like hard turn away from it when I went to animation school. Because I quickly picked up on the fact that this stuff was ridiculed and
Yeah.
like no one liked it. But I always kind of kept parts of it in my style, I think. I think my current style still has this chunkiness to it
Yeah.
that I first explored with these anthro/furry characters, and also a colorful aspect to it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because I loved exploring color and I loved looking at them as a way of like expressing style. And you could really push the style further if they were like half animal, half human. And on the left, you can see my character, No Girl, who I still draw quite frequently. Except now she's like a human. But back then she was like a gray, cat-like furry, which was a lot of fun to draw. And I can see like as well when I look at this how influenced I was by My Little Pony and that kind of stuff. So like 80s toys.
Yeah. Yeah.
The
Definitely
hair.
the color. Yeah.
Yeah, I was very nostalgic when I was drawing these. So this was like a thing I was really into, but like kind of moved away from after a while. This is some artwork from my first year in animation school. And there's sort of a backstory to this. So I showed up to the entrance exam with like, you know, this kind of stuff. And they were like, they could see that I had technical skill,
Yeah.
but they hated this. And they literally said like, we never want to see this again. So you're accepted, but you cannot draw this stuff anymore. And I was like, okay, well, I can handle that. But I really couldn't. So it was really hard for me to like have to throw away everything I liked. And it wasn't really, it was hard for me to understand what did they want to see. If I wasn't going to make like super colorful stuff, what did they want to see? And that was really hard to read. And I think there was a lot of culture clash happening as well, because I'm Dutch and Dutch people put a very high emphasis on clear communication and sometimes are so blunt that they're considered extremely rude. But as long as you're honest, you know, that's the most important thing. And I did my first year of college in Belgium at a school called Gosk. And there Belgians don't, I think, put the same value on honesty. They are much more subtle, much more indirect. They consider the Dutch way of communicating to be extremely rude and overwhelming.
Yeah.
But I found because of that, and I also spoke a lot of English rather than Dutch. My Dutch wasn't great because I was living outside of the Netherlands for much of my childhood. And I really struggled to communicate with them, like language-wise, but also culture-wise. So I just didn't really know what they wanted from me, but I could feel their disapproval, right? So I tried to adapt to what they wanted to see. And they liked gags and jokes that kind of like at the expense of someone. They liked caricatures. They liked sketches that were like intentionally kind of ugly. They liked stuff that emphasized weirdness and quirks. And my art was the total opposite. Like everything I was drawing before that was like just because it was pretty and because it was cute and fun. And they did not like that. So I tried for much of the year to adapt. And I remember when I made this storyboard here on the left side, it's like a really weird story showing like these sort of weird old people like frying on the beach. and there's like some kind of scale joke to it that in the end, like there's all these like weird like seagulls flying around them, but then it turns out that they're actually really small, and she like swats it to death with a fly. I don't really understand what the joke was. They were really into this though. They were like, this is great, you finally found it, you know, we're gonna love this is gonna be awesome. And the kind of sketches you see on the right side also got pretty good feedback from them. And I personally, like, just I didn't like it. I didn't like it. I didn't understand it. I
don't see you in it. Like, there's more of a Carter Goodrich vibe to it. Like that lady. There, it's definitely not Lois. There's
it wasn't me at all.
You lost yourself here.
Yeah, definitely.
Basically, what happened to me happened to you as well.
Yeah, and I felt very like proud for like a minute that I had finally achieved something they liked, and then I instantly was like, I can't do this anymore. And I literally one day. This is something that I have to emphasize. I was extremely privileged in being able to do this because art school in Belgium for Dutch citizens and also Dutch art school was very affordable at the time. So I just one day just didn't come back. I just went home to my mom's, and I just, because she lived in Brussels, it was like about half an hour with the train, and I got there and I just didn't go back. I was like, I just don't want to. And it wasn't even a conscious choice. I just physically couldn't. You know, if I had to get up and go back to school, I just couldn't. So I
mean, I understand that, because basically they killed what was you.
Yeah, that's what it felt like for sure. I mean, but actually, I killed what was me.
Yeah, you
I
let
didn't
them
defend.
Yeah, you let them.
Yeah, and I didn't understand why I wasn't comfortable in this stuff.
Yeah,
so I felt very guilty because the stuff that I drew before was super girly, and I could notice that people did not like girly. They thought that girly was like for babies. And now that I'm older, I can see that there's a lot of sexism to that. There was a lot of like, oh, this is too, you know, because there were a lot of like male students who also made very, you know, simple art that didn't have a deeper level, but because it wasn't like extremely disgustingly feminine, they didn't really have as much of a problem with it, you know. So there was a lot of like layers of things going on, but honestly, I really didn't know how to defend what I wanted to do. So I just the only thing I could think of was to just literally flee and never show up again.
How old were you?
I was 19.
Yeah. Well, you know, I recognize this because I was 18 when I went to art school, so 19 when I had to choose a course of what I wanted to do, and this is so similar.
Yeah, you're very vulnerable at that age.
You're so, because you don't have a clue what you're doing. You don't have a clue what you're doing. You're thinking, okay, I'm going to art school, I'm going to animation school, and this is it. This is going to learn how to be an artist, and you're not. You're getting just some tools, but it's definitely not the only way.
Yeah, and especially if there's a lot of communication, like miscommunication, it's almost like not worth it, you know. And that's something that looking back I could see that like I was really wasting my time and my money by going to that school, because it just wasn't the place where I would be able to learn the communication skills needed, you know, to get into the work field. I think for others it would have been the right place, but for me personally, just the click wasn't there. The communication style wasn't natural for me.
But nowadays you don't have to go.
Nowadays you don't have to go. And there are a lot of people who share their negative experiences about art school. And I think if that had been more of like an openly discussed topic at the time, I would have felt less like I was doing something wrong and identified more like it's just the lack of connection, like no click.
Yeah, the institute doesn't really, back then, didn't really, you know, click. It didn't fit the what, you know, how do you say that? It didn't fit the help me out here. I'm dying here.
Or what people wanted to do.
Yeah, what people wanted to do, or
what the industry was doing.
Didn't fit the industry. It was just I very much felt like you had to be an artist. As in, throw some paint on that canvas, look at it, and call it art.
Yeah,
and just have a bullshit story.
They didn't see that there was like a career that could be built on making kind of fan art type of stuff.
Yeah,
it's like now you see that a lot, but back then that was like not.
Yeah, and I think internet has a big chunk in this, that the way of learning has changed significantly, and then you have schoolism and all these online art schools that are affordable. You don't have to go to a very expensive art university to learn these things.
Exactly. And you can learn them in an environment that's less like all encompassing, because being away from home, being out, you know, like living on my own in a different country, it was very, very alienating. And this is the last thing that's sort of about no, this is for the next part, and the next part is turning points. And now it's your turn to do.
Oh yeah,
that's the last section we're going into.
This is long.
It is.
We've gone
everybody's still sticking around by this time. Like, kudos to you for listening to us.
Like, oh man. Well, my turning points were things like this. in 2016, I completely felt like a failure, and I didn't get any jobs, and I wasn't being fulfilled by what I was doing. I was doing all these children's books and stuff like that, and it was like, oh, all of this was meh. It wasn't. I didn't feel it, and I decided to just go back to sketching, like way back, and used the prompt mermaid that I saw on Instagram. I started drawing these weird mermaids, and pages and pages and pages and pages were filled with just weird mermaids, and I found my way back to what I love doing, and I saw my style, or the way I drew, evolve from there. And that was quite quickly, actually. That really went really just in a couple of months. I just found it clicked. It completely clicked. And then the big click was that image on the left, that green man. I was painting that one. It was June, and June fade. And at that point, I had stopped painting fairies for many years, many years. And I didn't want to draw fairies anymore, because every time I said that I was a fantasy artist in the Netherlands, somebody would come up to me and say, "Oh, you paint fairies?" And they thought I would do the sparkly, stripy pants, fairies and stuff like that. No, I don't, unless they're boiled. So I wasn't planning on doing fairies, but the fairies had other plans with me. And that image on the left was one of the first ones that I painted, where everything just clicked. I felt my medium was I felt comfortable with my medium. I felt comfortable with the storytelling, the narrative in that piece. And all of a sudden, one after the other just came tumbling on the paper. And it's literally, gushing on the paper, because I just have to, what you see here is just, that's one page of my sketchbook.
Yeah. So every idea you put down generated more ideas.
Yes. And
it's the ultimate creative flow.
Yeah, I was back to that, like, almost visually dumping things in my sketchbook and just going for it. Just, asking myself questions about profiles, interesting profiles. I saw a goat's horn, and just, how does that work, and how can I incorporate that into a face, and how, and one thing led to the other. And this is pretty much what happened. And that this is 2016. So in this very, very short time, where I was just scrambling to find jobs and just all over the place and not feeling any of it, and just thinking, okay, this whole idea of being an artist is just, failed. Again, can't do it. Will never do it. How old was I? I think 37 or something. And I felt like a complete loser, because in the art world, and especially nowadays, it's perpetuated that you have to be somewhere before you're 25.
Yeah. And you have to have a style, and you have to know exactly what you like to do.
And I was 37, and I wasn't doing anything significant. I had jobs, the odd job here and there, but it was like, yeah, okay, I'm doing this. Wasn't making any money. And all of a sudden I found this, and I had so much fun painting this. I had so freaking much fun with this. And the only reason I was doing it is because I wanted to do it. And there was no other reason. I was not interested in if people liked it. Yes, of course, I loved it when people liked it. I loved hearing all those.
You got a lot of positive response on this.
So many.
And I think it's because people could tell that you were enjoying yourself.
Yeah.
So it wasn't really about trying to please your audience, but much more about like connecting with them on the level of enjoyment. Like, yeah. And being in a good creative flow, which people can really sense.
I was definitely not interested in, making money or creating something to leave a mark or anything. I wasn't going for the high end, or how do you call that? Like, I wasn't planning on anything. I just wanted to tell stories and just let people enjoy something. Yeah. And, they did. And that was just freaking amazing. And all of a sudden I felt so comfortable with what I was doing. And it's pretty much where anything led to what I'm doing now. And this is what I'm still doing. I'm creating this is me. This is me having fun. This is me still filling page after page after page with ideas and sketches and stories. And I'll pick one of those out and just render it or paint it. And even like things like this, like I can show you, like this little dude here, that's just a scribble. to many.
I like how your work has gotten more, almost, I would say, like more simple in its concept.
Yeah.
Like that you were doing much more complex pieces, trying to integrate a lot of different things earlier on. And now you're much more like just coming from a simple idea.
Yeah.
And just letting that flow.
I find it more important to just leave things open.
Yeah.
I think art that's open is more interesting. Like it leaves something to the imagination of the people who are viewing the piece. Because I tried so hard explaining everything, and it just falls on deaf ears. You know, nobody understands because I'm not there to tell them the story.
Yeah.
Whereas what I'm doing now is much more like it gives a hint of a story, a hint of an idea, and I leave it up to the viewer to finalize their version of that story. So for me, then the art becomes alive, and it lives on, and not just with me, but with everybody who watches it. So yeah, that's that's just 2016, 2017 was the eye opener. This book happened, Fairies Over Fault Lines. That new edition of that one is coming out next year. But I'm still doing whatever I want to do. I'm still making sculpts because I want to do that, and I have fun with it. And I feel that when I'm doing three-dimensional stuff, it informs my two-dimensional stuff as well.
Yeah.
But I've given up on digital, for instance. I don't have that connection with digital. I need my paints. I need to feel. I need to touch my paper. I need to have that connection with my surface, and I have to get that connection with the paint. And it's tough sometimes because yes, I've painted some pieces when I have a deadline of a week, and I've painted pieces 5-6 times in a row just to get something right. Whereas if I did that digital, that would be easy.
Yeah.
But
it allows your creativity to thrive, so it works.
Yeah, and I don't want to fight my pieces. I just want to. It feels like communicating. It feels like very much a symbiosis of me and the piece and the paper and the concept and all my materials just working together to tell a story. And I think that, in a sense, is the magic of the art, and that's what I feel is happening for me personally here. And it makes me extremely happy to see these, and it's fun to see because these are some of the older pieces, and I still just love them. I'm sorry, I love them. I feel very happy with these. This is younger stuff, but yeah, this is what happened. This is all these fairies and stuff, but again, there is darkness in there still. So the horror darkness elements are still there. It's still it's not per se cute and cuddly. There's edges, and I love that in my art, that those edges.
I think that by exploring all the different things that you looked into and all those side quests and trying different techniques, that you found, like, you kind of threw all the ingredients together and it was chaos, but then you knew exactly which ones to take out for that natural flow. Yeah,
it's like elimination.
Yeah,
you have to know what you're eliminating from. And I hate regret. I hate not knowing something. I hate not having tried something, and like the what ifs. I want to know if something is for me. So I want to try new things, and I don't, if I've done something, I'm like, okay, I've done this, I don't like it, I'm moving on. It's like going on a roller coaster, just being batshit, thinking, oh, I'm gonna die, this is nothing for me. And then, you've done it. You tried it, it's not for you, move on, next thing. There's no what ifs, there's no regrets. And then, all of that just accumulated into client work such as this. Like, I started working for Magic. Wizards of the Coast came to me to ask if I wanted to work for them. And this is my very first card, which is now up for nomination. No, it's nominated for a Chesley Award, which is...
Congratulations.
I mean, I know I don't win awards. Yes, I won one award when I was like 10 years old with a Punica, the drink Punica Oaza.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I won a Sega Mega Drive. I still have it.
That's pretty awesome.
I know, right? That's the best. Like, if the Chesley Awards has a Sega Mega Drive, I'm down for it. Anyway, but yeah, Magic came, and then all of a sudden, to make the circle round again, I just did the Dark Crystal Bestiary, which comes out next month. And I was, Brian Froud himself asked if I wanted to do this book. And,
it's amazing. You have to send him those first sketches now.
I'm going to show him in person. I want to see his face.
You've got to do that
He's
now.
gonna be brutal,
Yeah.
but with a wink. He's gonna be brutal with a wink. I know.
Imagine telling that to your like 8-year-old self, that you're going to become a professional artist for the very artist that inspired you.
I mean, I was such a big fan of him and Alan, by the way, when I was at that age. Like, I idolized them,
Yeah.
and now they're friends.
Yeah,
And
amazing.
I've done this. And all of that just came from trying all these things, making all these mistakes, and then just finding what made me feel comfortable. And like, if I look at that Ogra, she is not perfect, but I love the balance of detail and looseness, and that's definitely where I found my strength.
Yeah, I think that's definitely what shows the most in your progression, is that you found your click when you went rougher, when you went more loose, and that's where you found like your strength.
Yeah, and being comfortable with not being perfect.
Yeah.
And that's so important. And just being comfortable with being whoever you are as an artist, and you don't have to be like anybody else, and you don't have to do digital if it's not your cup of tea.
Yeah.
And then whatever everybody else is saying, just make sure that you're as quick as everybody else. I mean, there's no digital enhancement other than value change, in color Photoshop, but there's nothing. That light is just freaking paint. It's traditional paint. It's not a Photoshop filter thingy, and I'm doing it.
Congratulations.
Sorry. But I'm like, yeah, I made it.
All right, let's wrap it up. I'm gonna do my final part. Let's see. Share. Right. And so this is a slide. This for me was a turning point in the sense that so like it's like each column sort of led to the next column, led to the final column. And this was my sort of transition from the anime influence stuff into like what I consider to be the earliest examples of my own style.
Yeah.
So the ones on the left are like super inspired by the anime style and are definitely like trying to do things that I saw somewhere else, but not really feeling it, not really understanding it so well. And then in the middle, you can kind of see that like I'm toning it down a little bit with the anime, slightly fewer eyelashes, maybe the proportions changed a little bit. And then by the last step, so these were truly like the top right one is the first drawing that I ever made where it was on an Akaki board, and the comments that I got on it were like, "We love your style." And I was like, I have style? I had no idea. Like I didn't think I had one. And those were the first times that I drew like a kind of character in a way, with a kind of expression that I was like, this captures what I'm trying to do with these girls. Like I want them to look, to like have a kind of warmth to them, a kind of cuteness to them. And with the anime stuff, I felt like it was sort of a shield, it was like keeping you away from the character. And when
there's less personality in them.
Because I'm much more like imitating something that somebody else has mastered, and I hadn't found my own way in that. Yeah. So by the last column, I felt I had found my own way. And I still feel like the faces that I draw, even though they're quite different from these faces, I feel like they have the same essence. They have the same kind of like maybe basic structure and feeling to them. But those were the first drawings where I made that, and I felt like I was getting like, I didn't even know that I had landed on it until other people were saying like, "Oh, that's Loish. She has a certain style," and I was like, "Okay, I guess I have a certain style." Bizarre. And then this was my attempt to work towards something painterly.
Oh wow!
So on the left side are all of my attempts to make painterly kind of stuff in the program Painter, because I thought that I couldn't do that in Photoshop. I thought that like I needed to have a special kind of brush, which is like I think something that all beginners struggle with and think that like
what's your brush? What brush are you using?
I need that brush because then I can get that effect. And I didn't know how to get the effect in my workflow. So I was drawing all of these kind of like blended, brownish, like monochromatic characters, trying to get like some detail in the faces, but it was so hard. And a lot of these sketches had like curse words written next to them because I just couldn't get it to work. I was so frustrated. I was like, oh, I can nail this painterly look. And then I draw it and be like, this is totally not what I'm trying to do. And then the drawing on the right is an Akaki that I drew. And that was one of the first drawings that I ever made where I realized like, it's not about the brush, it's about the way that you blend. And I had a mental switch where I started to think of the colors as like a kind of clay. And I started thinking of color as sculpting rather than, like mimicking an effect from the outside. And so I started thinking about the shape of the arm and the collarbones, which are like super extreme, but I was like pushing it because I was sort of trying to bring out the shape with light and shadow. And I went kind of all out with this and just painted all over it. And you saw in my earlier art that cross hatching was a thing for me. And I sort of found out how to translate the cross hatching to blending color, and that would help me get the more painterly style.
I love that nose, by the way.
It's very like extreme. It's very pointy.
But I love though, the shadow, that the redness. I love it.
I've always had a fascination with like from the very earliest steps of trying to get this manga style down, which later became more semi-realistic. I wanted to get the form down. Like I didn't want to just have it look a certain way. I wanted to get the shapes right so that it could feel three-dimensional. And that was like my main struggle early on. And that's why noses have always been a thing for me, because I always wanted to show that the nose is like sticking out. And it's not just like two dots on the face, but that it has a form, And I think early on, I got a lot of comments from people saying like, I love how you draw like real women with real curves, which is like something that now I'm always like, well, what's a real woman? Like, let's not get into that. Let's not judge what a real woman is. But I get why they said that. I think because I was really trying to get the shape. I was like really focused on getting the three-dimensionality. Whereas in a lot of like similar styles at that time in 2004, 2003, like skinniness was like really a thing. Like everyone was very thin or wanted to be very thin. And like nowadays you have like thick is like a positive thing to say. But in 2003, that was like horrendous. Like you had these actresses who were like celebrated for being more curvy. And I would look at them and be like, they're not curvy. They're literally like just maybe 5 pounds heavier than Paris Hilton. There was like not a lot of appreciation for like the thickness of a character. And I always wanted to capture that. Like, I don't know, because it made them feel more real. So that's what was my obsession with painterliness. And this is my final slide. These are some of the drawings that I made that like, I felt like I had finally figured something out. So the one on the left is like a pixelated drawing from Akaki. And what I learned when I was drawing that is that if you keep the colors in a similar color range, you can like go in all directions as long as you like stay in the range of that first color. So I went for like these earthy tones, and then I added some greens, I added some yellows, I added some pinks, I added some reds. And then I realized like, as long as you stay in a similar range and kind of like go stray out from there, but not too far. And then you have that one accent that catches the eye, then the colors can really work, and you can get really adventurous with the shadows and the highlights as long as they're similar. And in these shadows, I added a lot of color to them as well, like some green tones and some desaturated tones. And that's where I really learned the basic principles that I still use all the time in my art, which is like, don't just use lighter version of the base color, darker version of the base color, but get adventurous with the colors that you add and be playful with them. And so this Akaki is one of the first times that I really felt like I had found that and I could really explore the colors. The one in the middle was one of my first popular drawings on DeviantArt. And that's the first time that I learned that like, if I add a little bit of like a lighter gray in the shadows, that it feels much more 3D. And when I drew this character, like I really felt that she was like, I could picture her as like a figurine or something. She had that three-dimensional feel. She does. And the proportions, like these small shoulders and then like giant feet. When I drew this, I was like, I got this. Like I figured out something that I really like,
This is, this goes back to your furries. I mean, only these are humans.
Yeah, exactly. This has the furry element to it for sure. Yeah. And
so you found your way back.
Yes, exactly. And the one on the right is like the first time that I had this thing where I would draw the lines and then color in the lines, which is what I have in the middle one as well. Like just color them in, maybe change the color of the lines in some areas, but stick to the line work. And I spent a lot of time on line art. And because of that, and it took a lot of time. It was just super time consuming and the least interesting part of the creative process, because I loved sketching, I loved adding the color, but making the line work was just really, really time consuming and boring. My hand just wasn't that steady and it just wasn't my thing. So the painting on the right, I was sort of coloring her in, and then I realized like, maybe I should change the lines a little bit here. And then I just made a new layer on top and just kind of started painting over it. And then I just didn't stop. I was like, wait, I could also paint over the lines here, and I could paint over there, and I could actually change her face by painting over the whole thing. And then I realized like, I don't need to stick to the line work anymore. When I paint over the line work, it just feels much more sculpted. It has that feeling that I want. So this was the first time that I started painting over the lines, and that's from there, it was just straight into what I have now, which is like, I make a sketch, I add the color, and then I just paint from there. I completely skip the line work part. I just cut it out. Yeah. And now that's one of my main recommendations when I give my workshop on my workflow is like, if there's a part that's slow, that's holding you back and that just feels like work, what happens if you just don't do that part? Like maybe, if there's people who hate working in color, and it's like, but what if you just do black and white stuff? Maybe that'll free you. Maybe that's the little thing you need to do to like what you had, like just keep just working rough and loose, maybe that's the click.
your style with that, like you work with your sketch and then you put the base colors on there and you paint from there. It's basically what I do. I paint on top of my graphite sketches and just work for that, and I sketch with my watercolors on top of a sketch.
Yeah.
It's very
it's just
similar.
much more intuitive. You can just go straight. It feels much more like it just comes from the mind and onto the screen or page.
If you have to transfer your piece, and that's the part I hate, is transferring your sketch, your initial sketch, to the paper you're going to paint on. You always lose some of that spontaneity of those lines, and that's what I don't like with some of the art. So it's fun to see that it's a very similar work style or work ethic. Is that work ethic?
I'd say workflow. Maybe
workflow. You got the word. I'm the Dumbo here.
No,
but
we've just been talking for like 3 hours.
Oh,
that always has an effect.
and people are people still listening.
I think everybody dipped out by now.
We can break this up in 3 sections. One section each day of Lightbox.
Yeah, chapters. Life chapters.
But anyway, I do think there's similarities, even though the medium is completely different. Workflows are very similar.
Yeah, it's intuitive workflow. And that's what I always recommend.
It's just a different medium, and whatever medium you prefer to work with, it's perfect. If you can, if you can express your meaning or tell your story in a certain medium best way, use it. Use it. Go with it.
And find the intuitive workflow that fits with you. Like everybody, like if there's any part that's holding you back, you could reevaluate how necessary it is, and then find a workflow for you. Because I know that there's some people who are like absolute at their strongest when they stick to just inks, for example. And it's like you have to unlock that creativity by letting go, shedding out the stuff that isn't helping you, that isn't feeding into creativity.
That's why all these are questions about what brush are you using, what paper are you using, what pigments are you using, all that information. I get the questions. I understand why you're asking these questions, because I asked these questions as well in the beginning, thinking that those things were the magic ingredient, but it's not.
No, it's much more like it's just a thing that's in your hand, and that comes out. Like for me, searching for that painterly effect just took a lot of time. Just took a lot of time to cultivate, and then at some point it just became more natural.
Yeah, and it's just all these things are tools, and we each use them in a different way. So it's like everything. Just try everything. Just figure out what works for you, and like you said, cut out what doesn't work. Don't focus on that. If you like to work, I don't know what all these brushes in Photoshop are called. I'm sorry, I don't do digital.
Well, I only use like one brush all the time, and it's just a hard round brush. Okay, so to wrap it up, we each have a tip that we can give.
Do we?
And my main tip, I think we've given a lot of advice already along the way, but my main tip that I want to give anyone who made it this far into the stream is to indulge in your guilty pleasure. That's truly my main advice. Like, you have something that you love to draw, and maybe because of like what other people say around you, or what teachers have said to you, or parents, or whatever, you kind of feel like it's embarrassing or silly. And we also talked about our own art during this live stream, like, this is very embarrassing. But it's not, because you just shouldn't feel any shame over stuff that you enjoyed doing. And you have to keep a little part of your artistic practice that is like just for you, and that you do just because you love it. And you can't throw it all away because there's like some gatekeeping in the art community about what is and isn't acceptable kind of genres or types of art. So I always say, don't ignore your guilty pleasure. Keep it as your artistic safe place. Don't let it go. You might have to put it aside for a little bit because you have different focus for a while, but keep holding on to it, like, and indulge in your guilty pleasure every now and then.
Yeah, good tip. For me, it's definitely, I've said this before, say it again, try everything. Try as many things you want to try, and just, indulge yourself, figure out what works for you. Sketch a lot, sketch often. All those excuses of I haven't got the time. Well, you sit on the toilet. That's 5 minutes a day, 10 minutes a day, whatever. Have a sketchbook there, sketch. Don't be afraid of making mistakes. So many people are so afraid of making mistakes and just not, they want to create that perfect image, and it doesn't exist. I hate to say it to you, but it won't be perfect. Nothing you create will be perfect. It will never be what you have in mind, and each and every piece you create will be the next perfect piece. So embrace all those mistakes, and they are the source of your learning. you learn more from those mistakes than you'll ever learn from your successes, I think.
Yeah, and there's no such thing as a mistake really in art.
No.
It's much more like you can look at it from a certain point of view and think about whether it was what you were trying to achieve. But even then, like, other people can see beauty in it where you don't.
I mean, look at what we've shown you, and all those embarrassing things. I still look at those fondly and think, oh, hey, I mean, there's stuff I've seen, and I'm looking at it and I'm thinking, how can I just, that idea, I like that idea that I did 20 years ago. Let's take that and try this now. So all that old stuff has value. So for me, it's not embarrassing.
It's all part of a journey.
It's part of who I became and who Lois became. So don't be afraid. Don't just try things. Make mistakes. Fuck up now and then, and change course, change your mind, but do it with 100% of you.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
I make sense sometimes.
Yeah, you do. You're a wise lady.
You're a wise old woman. That's what you wanted to say. I know you were.
Oh, wow. I am too. We're like pretty much the same age, aren't we?
I think I'm way older.
We're close.
Well,
we're old enough to be giving advice anyway, so here we are.
I'm a cackling crone, so I can do this.
All right. Well, we made it this far.
It's under 3 hours.
Incredible. I think our first goal was to keep it an hour long, but well, Hey, I had fun. Glad that I had the chance to say everything I wanted to say. Because those real life panels that are shorter, I always feel like I walk away like, oh, there's so much more I wanted to say about that. All right, so thank you so much, everyone who tuned in, everybody who watched. And remember, you'll be able to watch this stream again at a later point. We are streaming at 2 separate time frames, which we'll specify in our social media. And after that, you can still come back and watch this. So you can watch it in short intervals if that works for you. So whatever works for you, no pressure. And I hope you guys enjoy the rest of Lightbox and that you enjoyed this stream. And remember to always keep drawing and always try new things. Bye-bye.